Hi everybody, this is Brian Koo with another ROK video, and if it looks rough, believe me, it felt rough. This is what it's like to deal with a fort drop from the Imperium Kingdom 2268. We are looking at footage from our recent war in the Sword of Stratagem's Lost Kingdom. We're about 3 hours into the fighting at this point, and we have now set up a very substantial fort wall that 2268 got a look at for the first time, and somewhere along the way in the last hour or so, they must have realized this fort wall is going to be annoying to get through. Let's try to fort drop behind it and not have to deal with the wall at all. And so this is the first of what would end up being 4 fort drops that 2268 did in the first 24 hours of this war. And this was one of the most dangerous fort drops, actually. Right now you're seeing Chadsky, one of 2268's biggest whales, keeping our marches off of his teammates as they rally down a barbarian fort to open up additional teleport space. And I essentially was in a spot here where I was not actually near the fort, but I had a very good teleport spot to cut off the reinforcements from 2268 that were on their way non-stop towards their fort drop. And, you know, we had our moments here. We had our moments where we were able to pick off a march or two from the enemy. But the reality is, there were 3 key fighters for us here, myself, Natsu, and Marvel. And, you know, Natsu and I are both medium spending players, and Marvel is, I believe, a very low spending player who's just super, super active. And we were trying to hold off not only tons of 2268 murder balls that were headed towards the fort drop, but we were also having to deal with War Daddy Chadsky, whose city had random teleported right to this key bottleneck spot where we were trying to cut off the enemy, and Chadsky was trying to protect and escort his teammates as they went towards the fort. And, you know, I'm just running my marches down here. I'm literally just running my marches down, and you know, this video is really kind of like a good example of how much my life as an open field fighter in Rise of Kingdoms sucks. You know, I've got 4 marches out here, and I'm inevitably fighting non-stop against people who have 6 or 7 marches. My very best gear is on my Attila Gorgo that's sitting in a garrison. My best infantry gear is on a Xeno that's just sitting in my city, getting ready to reinforce a flag. And, you know, I've got a Justin William instead of a Huo William. I don't have an LC. And so it's just rough to always be under strength against these very strong fighters. But, you know, this was a tough spot. And what was happening here was that it was a test between 2268's ability to send marches to the fort versus our ability to destroy their marches before more of them came back. And, you know, because this was such an important objective, because, you know, the whole zone tilted on 2268's ability to get one of these forts down versus our ability to destroy them all, you really have to be extremely objective focused here. It's not about the trades at all. In no way, shape, or form is a fight like this about the trades, and that's why you're seeing me play so aggressively and even rush to bring my marches back out and risk filling up my hospital over and over again. The more damage that you can do, the better the better chance your team has of meeting its objectives. And so you have to, you know, you have to shift the way you play in a really key fight like this. And I think as we get through this video, we're going to see some of the ways that a player can be really exceptional in a fight like this, or a player can just be kind of mediocre. And I think one of the things you have to do to be really good in a fight like this is you just have to be very aggressive. You have to do as much damage as you possibly can. You have to heal very quickly, and you have to get back out there. Because there were moments, like right now, where we were very close to overwhelming their field at the fort. But the problem was, they had these huge replenishment armies that were coming all together on a timed interval. And once all those 60 or 70 marches got back to the fort, they were very difficult to deal with. 60 to 70 marches from a really big Imperium like 2268 is very difficult to deal with, even if all of our cities are teleported very close by. And what you're really trying to do in my situation when you're cutting off reinforcement marches is you're just trying to pick a part of the ball that you can actually deal with. So a lot of times you'll be trying to cut off the end of the ball, the back end of the ball, because you don't expect anyone to turn around and help the back end of the ball. I was able to pick off one player as they walked towards this fort drop, and now I'm just trying to find a spot on this ball to actually, successfully latch onto some marches without getting massive resistance. Right there, I did get some resistance. I ran away. I'm going back in again now. And the one thing we really had going for us here was that, as you can see, we're on territory that's under construction. We had a fort that was being built right at this location. And once that fort is finished, it's going to teleport War Daddy Chadsky away. And that was a very big deal for us. As I'm getting just absolutely wrecked here over and over again, I was sort of counting the minutes until Chadsky got teleported away. And, I'm not really looking at the fort too much here because I'm just not able to do anything at the fort. I'm not able to get to the fort, and I have very good priorities up north where I am trying to cut off the reinforcements. And now look at what's happened, right? Those 60 or 70 marches that we saw rushing towards the fort, they've now arrived. They've pushed us completely off of the fort. And all of a sudden, 2268 is in really good shape again. They've all got all the marches they need at that fort to keep us off it. They have a few players teleported very close by. And, this was a very hectic situation. And right now, I'm looking at this barb fort. I'm like, we need to get rid of that barb fort so we can get another teleport spot. So we can get another player teleported here and help cut off reinforcements. And one of the things that you'll note here is that I'm the one who's rallying this barb fort. And I think one lesson here is that the most successful leaders in Rise of Kingdoms, in really hectic situations like this, they don't delegate. They just get stuff done. That's the mark of a really good leader in war, is just the ability to get stuff done. And in many cases, the best way to get things done is to just do it yourself. And so I've launched a rally on this barb fort to clear this teleport spot. I'm now fighting in the field with 3 marches against, an absolute mob of red enemies. And, I think I get a little bit frustrated here because killing this barb fort is a really big deal. And almost nobody joined my rally. And you can see there's also a barb fort here right at the fort that we've been unable to get down. I'm going to imagine that not that many people were filling up those barb fort rallies as well. And you can see I literally only have one person who joined my rally, and it was probably one of my farms. And it's just kind of a little bit ridiculous because we've got 10 or 12 cities teleported right around here. And there's literally nothing more important they could have been doing in the last 2 or 3 minutes than helping me clear that barb fort and open up another teleport space. Because when you open up that teleport space, that's a permanent 6 or 7 marches that are in the field for the next 30 minutes. And there's nothing that your 6 marches can do in a 2 to 3 minute window that is more valuable than having another 6 or 7 marches here for the next half hour. And so I think, it's just, these are the moments where you have to lock in. These moments where you are playing like a super important role in a fight, you have to lock in, and you have to, the key really is to be able to do more than one thing at a time. Like, be able to fight in the open field, but also be able to fill the Barb Fort rallies that your teammates are asking you to fill. And so, and also, do things like, clear your hospital in time so that you don't take deads, and then get your marches back out on the field really, really quickly. And so what's happening right now is that Chadsky is about to get teleported away. There's about 45 seconds left on this fort before it finishes. And so Chadsky is having his last hurrah in the field here, clearing us away one last time. And I really like the way that Chadsky fought in this little scenario here. This was one of my first experiences playing against him. You can see here, by the way, that our allies Daybreak have formed a ball that are cutting off the reinforcements of 2268. And it is undoubtedly true that Daybreak was pretty much the key to us being able to stop these fort drops. Without Daybreak moving over here as a group over and over again, we would not have been able to deal with the open field pressure of 2268. But in these really critical fort drops, the 2 fort drops that had a really good chance of succeeding, in both cases, Daybreak was on voice chat with us, and they were, active in bringing their marches over and helping us out. And that was just an absolute key, right? That was like an absolute key to not only this particular fort drop, but to the war as a whole, is that our allies on our side, we really helped each other out. We worked together, and it made a very big difference. You're seeing some of my reports here now, and, some of them are not bad, and then there's the occasional one that's absolutely awful. But, for as bad as this looked... Oh, and I want to point this out too. Like, I sent a little mail there where I sent the mail 2 hours earlier, and I basically said, hey, we're doing very well, but we need to gather up the tiles at markers 9 and 10, which is exactly what we're looking at right now. This is the exact area where 2 hours earlier I said, hey, we need to gather up these tiles because we need to get teleport space for this area. There was no fighting going on here, but it just seemed like the kind of area where there was going to be fighting later. And, I think one of the things I want to talk about here is just that, like, sometimes you have to do the boring stuff, sometimes you have to do the unfun stuff, and I am that guy who asks the team to do the unfun stuff. Like, join Barb Fort rallies instead of fight in the open field, gather tiles, jump on your farm and gather tiles instead of like nonstop fight in the open field. And by the way, you are seeing that Chadsky has essentially been replaced here by Grasshopper, one of our biggest whales, which is just like a super big deal, right? Controlling teleport space, gathering tiles, or killing Barb Forts to open up more teleport space. These are like very big deals. They seem like small things, they seem like mundane tasks, but they're actually very, very big deals. And another big deal is that when you're rallying a building, you need someone to keep scouting the building over and over again, who's on voice chat, who can tell you how many troops are left in that building. Because a lot of like key decisions get made around how many reinforcements are left in a garrison. Like, you have to decide whether to keep the rally going. You have to decide whether to swarm or not. You have to decide whether, the enemy's doing a good or bad job of keeping a building filled. And in this instance right here, really, like, I don't think anyone was scouting this fort. I kept asking for a scout and it just like didn't happen. And so on voice chat, we were like going back and forth about whether to swarm or not. You know, I'm looking at other things. I'm looking at my marches. I'm trying to fill up a flag. And there's all these cities right around this fortress. And there really was like no one on voice scouting this thing and telling us how much was left in the fort. And so the decision to swarm or not, we were just doing it completely blind because we had no one doing the very basic task of scouting the fort over and over again and telling us on voice chat how many troops were in there, right? And so it's just another example of like in these types of fights, what you have to do is you have to be able to A, focus, and B, do several things at once. Like you see, out of the corner of your eye, you might have seen that, but Adinavo, our R5, he was rallying this barb fort down that was right at the fort. And so even as we were looking really good here, Addy was doing a little bit extra to clear teleport space just in case we needed to keep this fight going. And you're seeing me, I filled up a flag, I garrisoned a flag, and I extinguished a flag instead of capturing the footage of the fort going down, right? And so, you know, again, just like be willing to do a bunch of things at once. Be willing to be a little bit imprecise in some of the stuff you do, as long as you do the really important things correctly. And, you know, this was just like a very good moment for us early in the war. This was the first fort drop they did. We sort of saw their style of fort drop, which was like this brute force type of fort drop where they essentially did fort drops very close to their own territory, and then they just sort of like walked as quickly as possible to that territory. We would end up destroying all 4 of their fort drops. This was one of the scarier ones. And, you know, it set us up for a nice 1.5 week defense in this zone. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I also do live streams every Friday evening, right around 0 UTC when the in-game day changes to Saturday. So be sure to join me for my live streams coming up in a day or two. And until next time, I will see you all on the flip side.